Hello and welcome to my presentation. My name is Kate and I'm a student at Colorado Christian University. I'm currently studying psychology with an emphasis in biblical studies. The purpose of the reflective interview was to determine if a person's mental, physical, and socio-emotional health affected their life story. I interviewed an elderly participant in her home. In her small one-bedroom house, she spends time with her cat each day and lights a candle for her recently deceased dog. She's a 73-year-old white female located in the Midwest and has lived in her location for a long time. She received a bachelor's in psychology and sociology in the 70s, but finds her true passion in early childhood education. She is unmarried and practices pluralism in metaphysical Christianity and Buddhism. She identifies as white, partially Jewish, and does not practice Judaism. In these ways, she is diverse in all aspects of her socioeconomic status. Having insight on her socioeconomic setting provides important details on how her life has been affected by it. According to Pew Research, her economic setting is low class as it considered her location, income, education, and occupation. Her status has made her life incredibly difficult as she struggles to find resources to support her. Kale and Kavanaugh state that in the United States, being poor in any setting is a major predictor of health changes. Thus, socioeconomic setting affects our health over time. From birth to adolescence, from our career to income, from middle age to retirement, depending on our status affects our health our entire lives. The Institute of Research on Poverty explains that although the connection between socioeconomic status and health is well established, how socioeconomic status affects health remains largely undiscovered. As I spoke with the participant, there were some key takeaways which seemed to have shaped her life. I had to ask her a few questions such as, what major events seemed to shape her development? Does this person view her life with integrity or despair? What significant loss she has experienced? How has she coped with loss? What role has religion played in her life? And how has her health affected her life? For major events, I noticed an overall theme in autonomy. Her freedom from certain aspects of her adolescence, emerging childhood, adulthood, and middle adulthood has remained one of the largest influence in who she is as a person. As far as integrity or despair, she reflects on her life with integrity and believes she has lived a meaningful life with people and pets who have contributed to her life. Many occurrences in her life were received with acceptance and resiliency. The most significant losses she's experienced are her grandmother, her daughter and partner, and her pets. She has coped with each situation by understanding the meaning behind death and has walked away with beliefs that each person or pet was in her life for a reason. She does not express feeling depressed. Rather, her plural beliefs helped her get through many difficult situations. Lastly, her physical health has been an issue for many years and has profound psychological effects on her as she successfully survives many illnesses. In conclusion, her mindset is to never give up, surround herself with friends and pets, and to find strength keep going, and to build her own life freely. These are a few major events within the participant's life that has shaped her development. She was born in 1948 and grew up with a family. Specifically, her mother left her biological father, remarried, and provided the bare minimum for her children. During that time, the participant found the most support from her grandmother. Around age 20, her grandmother passed away, so the participant left her family to find freedom from the structured home. A year later, she attended Woodstock, where she felt a deep connection to everyone, felt she was free from war, and free as a person. However, much of her life changed near the end of her bachelor's degree. In 1970, her boyfriend and child were killed in a car accident. In 1955 and onward, she has dealt with 3 different types of cancer and is in remission today. At this time, she pours herself in any religion that might help her. Thus, her beliefs strongly affect her thought about life and death. As I reflected on her story, I found that her common themes were agency and communion with others. According to Kale and Kavanaugh, authors of Human Development and Lifespan View, these are the most common goals when reflecting on our life story. Agency reflects on power, achievement, and autonomy, while communion reflects on love, intimacy, and a sense of belonging. For example, the participant specifically looked back on Woodstock saying, "It was very free. There was no fighting. I was very happy just to be around them all." This way of thinking reflects upon autonomy, intimacy, and sense of belonging. Her idea of autonomy was furthered as she discussed feeling free when leaving her family to shape her own life story. A fun fact that displayed her belief in agency and communion was her love for hot air balloons and flying in the backseat of her friend Cessna. Agency was one of the first themes to influence the participant. Communion with others who shared her interest also shaped her life and how she views it. Does she view her life with integrity or despair? As the participant looks back on her life, I asked her if she views her life with integrity or despair. To be clear, integrity is when a person must come to terms with the choices and the events that made his or her life unique. Despair depicts how people feel when looking back at their choices. One might ask, was everything pointless or meaningless? Do I fear death, or am I depressed? The participant has a strong outlook on her life with integrity. She always felt as if she made the right choices even when they were impulsive. She feels people cannot know that they made the right choices until much later in life. Her demeanor did not reflect despair, even though she's had encountered much adversity. The participant is glad to have lived and does not regret anything. Overall, she reflects on her life by coming to terms with it through religion and experiences. However, she does explain that she has blocked out much of her life because it was so painful. She has difficulty remember her feelings, choices she made, or when major events occurred. Ota McLeod and Udall, authors of Dynamic Cognitive Processes, state that when confronted with reminders to things that we would prefer not to think about, we often attempt to put the unwanted memories out of awareness. In the same way, the participant has spent a great deal of time hiding memories to the point of forgetting them. It is difficult to know if she only views the last portion of her life with integrity and the first of it with despair. The participant has experienced a few meaningful losses in her life. First, her grandma was a major role model, whom she lived with for a short time as a child. The participant said, "My grandmother was the only one who did everything. She taught me how to play poker. She taught me how to smoke cigarettes. I enjoyed her the most because she was pretty wonderful and she was out there." After her grandmother died, the participant felt there was no reason to stay with her family and moved to start college. In the 1970s, she and her partner had a child. However, a few years later, the child and partner were killed in an auto accident. This certainly was one of the pivotal points in the participant's life in trying to explain why death. Research shows that single parents must shoulder the tragic child loss experience alone. There's evidence to suggest that the absence of other children could make the loss experience more difficult and grief-troubled for the only child bereaved. Therefore, we must wonder how the participant dealt with loss since she was the only one without support from family, especially with the loss of her partner. Finally, her pets have had a strong influence in who she is as a person. The pets in her life were some of the more poignant deaths for her. Her pets were there day and night and supported her through everything. In this way, it may be similar to losing a family member. For the participant, coping with loss entirely depends on who we lose. Overall, important deaths in her life hit her hard. She struggles in coping with the most recent death of her dog. When referring to those who have died, the participant said, "I chose those people to come through to learn a lesson. I'm still trying to figure out what it was, because it wasn't their fault, really." One way she copes with death is how she understands it. For the participant, death is another phase and meant to occur. She chose people to be in her life and believes it was for her to learn a life lesson. Today, the participant says that she sees her recently passed dog around the house. This is one way she copes with grief. It is not uncommon for people to see a loved one after passing. Illusions or hallucinations are normal adult grief responses. According to the Institute of Medicine, this is a stage in which the subject exhibits searching behaviors, including hallucinations, dreams in which the deceased is still alive, seeing the deceased person in the street, and other illusions and misperceptions. Typically, people generally move from a state of disbelief to a gradual acceptance of the reality of the loss. Pets certainly have made a huge impact on the participant as she sees them as one of the most important deaths in her life. She reflected on how most people do not care about a pet's death, but for her, she says they lived a part in my life, I lived in part of their life. We were very much connected. What role has religion played in her life? The participant was raised in a Jewish home and feels everything in her very young childhood was structured. Most of her family was Jewish and rich. They participated in Jewish holidays, but she grew up wishing for Christmas and felt the Jewish holidays had no meaning in her life. During her emerging childhood, she was more wild within her friend group and did not practice religion. In 1995, after her cancer diagnosis, she said, "I opened up to everything to help me." Cancer was one of the biggest changes in her life, which turned her towards religion. She began to attend a metaphysical church, wearing Buddhist symbols and placing Buddhist statues in her home. The participant said, "I had Buddhist friends and I had Hindus and all of the offsprings because I wanted to know what they believed in and that I could fit in anywhere with me. And that could fit in anywhere with me." Generally, spiritual metaphysics often coincide with New Age beliefs, which depict how things are more spiritual than physical. According to research on late adulthood and religion by Dillon and Wink, religiousness plays a protective role on the elderly. In fact, participants who were in poor physical health and who were religious were as well satisfied with their lives and as positive in outlooks as their non-religious peers who enjoyed good physical health. Dillon and Wink found that religion's influence contain ongoing support. Even though the participant's socioeconomic status is low, class, she has found support from religious and non-religious sources. Similar to her attitude, she accepts wherever she can get it. She is no longer afraid to ask for help, but welcomes it. Strength is another theme in her life. As we know, she experienced a lot of heartbreak. She had to pull herself up from her bootstraps and carry herself through life. Philippians 4:13 is her life verse and hangs on her wall in her home. Philippians 4:13 states, "I can do all things through him who gives me strength." On her shelf, the Buddhist elephant Ganesh lays on its side. The participant explains it's a symbol of strength and overcoming obstacles. I had not anticipated such heartbreak in her life. From previous conversations I had known about the death of her daughter, but have since learned that the death has been on her doorstep for a long time and has affected who she is today. I also had not realized she lived with cancer since 1995. Simply her socioeconomic status has taken me by surprise as well. I knew she struggled, but never knew the depth of it until I asked the guided questions. The participant is a strong person because of how she had to take care of herself since she was young, how she looks at death and looks forward to the years she has left. A new approach I would like to take with future conversations is to ask people more in-depth conversations to find their socioeconomic status and see how it affects their life. I would also like to know how their beliefs play a role in that status. Her socioeconomic status has certainly impacted her, as she found it difficult to find support systems for her age, income, and housing. It is clear that her socioeconomic status has strongly affected her life story. I was surprised that the participant was similar to myself in many ways. I also have felt a deep desire for freedom in my life. I also have experienced a lot of adversity and found that only I could take care of myself. I had to do it on my own. Our religious affiliations are quite different, and I was surprised by her pluralistic views in contrast with my Christian worldview. Sometimes it can be difficult to know how to react to people with differing views. However, I have learned that we are all autonomous and have the ability to choose. The most I can offer is my advice to help others reach their goals, give when I have nothing left, and love them regardless of religion.